Greetings. Michael Didier here. We're going to go through the second part of the Passover. Last week we talked about many of the ordinances of the Passover. When we're supposed to select our lamb, we talked about the slaughter, we talked about the blood, we talked about the hyssop. Talked about many things related to keeping a real Passover. You can find in my writings, Keeping a Real Passover, I think is what it's called on my blog. You'll find it under the Feasts of Yehovah. Today, we're going to go through 11 verses, maybe 12 verses, 40 to 51. 11 verses. I guess that's 11 verses. But 43 to 48, 5 verses changed my life, changed everything for me when I became aware of what B'nai Israel is all about. Oh, you guys, children of Israel, we've learned such lies. Even the men of Israel, we don't get it. We just don't get it. And this whole business about Passover, remember we had 10 plagues. The Passover was the 10th plague. We had 10 plagues that turned us to Yehovah and his ways. Hopefully, remember the Israel's Jacob's seed really only had to go through 3 plagues before maybe they caught on and said, all right, we're going with them. We're going to talk about 4 different kinds of men today. We're going to talk about the 430 years. Oh, we got so much to talk about. Let's just get started. It'll change your life if you just listen. You know, Father, open our hearts, open our minds, open our eyes, open our ears. Let us learn and understand and live in wisdom. There's so many people that are asleep. Father, help them wake up. We need you today. We've learned a lot of lies. Oh, good. There's Nancy back. Bless your sweetheart, Nancy. I'm not going to unmute your phone right now. I'll let Dee do that, but we'll talk later. Let's begin. Verse 40. Now the sojourn of Israel's seed. You know what? I'm going to make this large. Now the sojourn of Israel's seed, here it is at the top, who lived in Egypt, was 430 years. You know, you do any kind of Bible quiz, you know. How long was Israel in Egypt? 430 years. Is that how long they lived in Egypt, you guys? Think about this. Yocheved, daughter of Levi, was born in Egypt. Yocheved is the mother of Moses. Moses lived 80 years before he brought Israel's seed out of Egypt. Did Yocheved have Moses at 250 years of age? Or did she have Moses at 130 years of age? Which I know from Yasha that's the facts. We were in Egypt for 210 years. But let me finish reading this, because there is some very significant things that are coming out here. 40 is right here. Now the sojourn of Israel's seed lived in Egypt for 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of 430 years, on that very same day, those are some pretty significant words. What was happening 430 years before on the very same day? See, we've got to learn to ask ourselves these questions. I'll bet I spent 8 years trying to figure out what this 430 years was all about. I found in Yasher that we were in Egypt for 210 years, so that helped a lot. But there is still more that we needed to understand. Let me finish this verse. It came to pass that all the armies of Yahovah went out. All the hosts is the word that they're using there, went out from the land of Egypt on that very same day. Remember, that is the first day of Passover. We celebrated the Passover slaughter the night before. We stayed in our homes, our gates, for the whole night, and the next day we left. Let me read this to you on the right. It says the 400-year prophecy, just to make this a little bit more clear. The 400-year prophecy, Sodom and Gomorrah destruction, Isaac's birth, Passover in Egypt, and the 430 years are all related on that same day. I'm going to pick it up here. By faith, he dwelt in the land, that land of promise, as in a foreign country. This is Hebrews. Sounds like Egypt to me. Dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. I wrote an article. It is, maybe I'll post it. I'm going to post it today on YouTube with the Born Again series, both articles, so that you can see this. The tents that Jacob dwelt in was the Ohalim. Makes it sound like he's dwelling in many tents. But we've got to understand the Hebrew plural versus the English plural. The Hebrew plural can be qualitative or it can be quantitative. Tents in our minds is quantitative, many tents. But in Hebrew, it can be one big tent. And the tent that Abraham and Isaac and Israel all dwell in is the Ohalim of Yahovah. It is the sky. You know, this is just more proof for another flat earth. I mean, it's another flat earth proof. If you haven't come on board with that, boy, you got a lot to learn. You know, the things I'm talking about today fly in the face of our religious understandings. You must be born again. We don't get it. We've learned lies. And like so much of what's going on in the earth right now, we've got to wake up. We are fast asleep. There's much for us to learn. and, flat earth. The things I'm going to talk about today in Passover. Becoming a spiritually born man. You must be born again. That's where it is. Jesus was talking to Nicodemus. Are you a teacher of Israel and you don't know these things? It was during Passover that he was saying it. Had nothing to do with Jesus. Are you a teacher of Israel and you don't know what the second birth is? Today, we're going to talk about the second birth. This is where it's at. Changed my life forever. But we've got to have eyes to see, hearts that understand. Here is the 430 years. I put, was Abraham's time in Haran, Canaan, Egypt, a kind of spiritual Egypt? The kingdom had not come together yet, like it did after we left Egypt. Here's the first time that Yehovah is talking to Abraham. This is the beginning of the 430 years. I put it all together. I put Abraham receives the prophecy. This is Yasher 13:17. This is the beginning. This is not even included in Torah because Abraham is not even introduced to us until he's 75. This is 70. Abraham is 70 when he receives this prophecy. This is what completed the 430 years for me. All I could find was 425 till I read this verse. And it was in the 15th year of Abraham's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is the 70th year of the life of Abraham. And Yehovah appeared to Abraham in that year, and he said to him, I am Yehovah, who brought thee out of Kasdim, to give thee this land for an inheritance. Now therefore walk before me and be perfect. Keep my commands. For to thee and to thy seed, to thee and to thy seed, I will give this land for an inheritance. From the river Mitzrayim, I think the river Mitzrayim must be the Nile, unto the great river Euphrates. And thou shalt come to thy fathers in peace and in good age. And in the fourth generation shall return here to this land and shall inherit it forever. And Abraham built an altar and he called upon Yehovah's name and called upon Yehovah's name, who appeared to him, and he brought up slaughters upon Yehovah's altar. Now, remember, on that very day, same day. It's going to say it once again, the last verse that we're going to talk about today. And it shall come to pass on that very same day that Yehovah brought Israel's seed out of the land of Egypt according to their armies. Do you think Yehovah is trying to make a point here? Why else would he say on that very same day? What is happening on those same days? Did it start 430 years ago? Let's continue. That was when he was 70. Here now, he's going to be 75. And we see now Abraham departs Haran when he's 75. So Abraham departed as Jehovah had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abraham was 75 years old when he departed Haran. I'm trying to give us a timeline so we can figure out the periods. So now we've got 5 years in. Next, Abraham is going to be 100 when Isaac is born. Oh, you know what? I didn't put that in here. I'm going to go to it here. When Isaac is born, because I added a little bit to this today, just for you. Oh, except it's not here. Where did I put it? 41. I must have put it on 41. Yes, here it is. All right. In chapter 15 of Genesis, Jehovah is again speaking to Abraham. This is between the 75 years and the 70 and his 100th year, somewhere in that time period. And he says this to Abraham. Then he said to Abram, know for certain. I think that's so interesting because when we say for certain, it's almost like on that very same day. Know for certain that your seed, okay, he hasn't had seed yet. When it receives this prophecy, he probably did have his other son, but it wasn't Isaac. He had Ishmael by then. Know for certain that your seed will be a stranger in the land that is not theirs. A stranger in the land. Abraham said that he named Gershom because he was a ger in the land of Egypt. But what Egypt was he talking about? Was he talking about the actual land of Egypt? Or was he talking about not being in his land? The land that Jehovah promised him. He says they will be a stranger, a ger, in the land that is not theirs. We're going to talk about a ger today. And will serve them, and they will afflict them for 400 years. 400 years. So we have a 430-year prophecy, and 30 years into the 430-year prophecy, now we get a 400-year prophecy. Isn't that interesting? See how it all fits together? This 400 years will begin at the birth of Abraham's seed, his descendant, Isaac. We're going to see that Isaac and all Israel's seed are born on the same day. So cool! You guys, this is so significant. Israel's seed can only be born on Passover, the very same day. Well, what did I say? Up above, here it is. We talked about I gotta go back here. I got it in two different places. I'm making it hard on myself. It's not there either. Doggone it. I've got 3 things going. Do I really have that? That's terrible. Topic notes. 400-year prophecy. Sodom and Gomorrah, destruction, Isaac's birth. So we just did the 400-year prophecy. Now let's look at Isaac's birth and the Sodom and Gomorrah. Actually, the Sodom and Gomorrah is going to be a year before Isaac's birth, but they're both going to be on the time of life, on the very same day. We can find that in Genesis 17. And we're going to begin down here on verse 5. No longer shall your name be called Abram. The time of life is the time that Abraham got a new name. Abram got a new name to Abraham. It's the time of life. I'll show you. Let's read it. And let's look for things that relate in this passage to what we were reading last week and what we're going to read this week in Exodus 12. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be called Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. The word that they always use for nations is goyim. I will make you exceedingly fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings shall come of you. He says, I will establish my covenants, my berit, between me and thee, and thy descendants after thee, in their generations, for an everlasting covenant. Ooh, does that sound familiar to anybody? Throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant. How many times did we read that last week? We're going to read them again this week. For an everlasting covenant, to be an Elohim to thee and thy descendants after thee. Also, I will give thee and thy descendants after thee the land in which thou art a stranger. All the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession. I will be their Elohim. Now listen carefully. And Jehovah said to Abraham, as for thee, thou shalt keep my covenant, my berit, you and your descendants after thee, throughout your generations. There he says it again. This is my covenant. This is my berit, which you shall keep, y'all shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. It says every male child. The child's not there. Every male. Every male. It doesn't say female. It doesn't say person. It says zakar. Every male among you. Here it is right here. Zakar. No, that's Zerah. There it is. Every male. Every male. All males among you shall be circumcised, and you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and thee. Now he says, he who is 8 days old among you, among y'all, shall be circumcised. Every male, not child, every male in thy generation, your generations, he who is born in your house or bought with money from any foreigner, the word they use there for foreigner is ben nakar, who is not your descendant. He who is born in your house, he who is bought with your money, must be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh as an everlasting covenant. There it is again, everlasting. The uncircumcised male, this is the word that they used here, is exposed. The exposed Arel male who is not circumcised is what they use, no mole. No mole. Remember, the mole in Judaism is the one who is going to circumcise the children. Well, you don't need a mole to do that. You need someone that understands how to do it. But it can be done. But it says the uncircumcised male, the Arel male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that soul, that person shall be cut off from among his people. He has broken my covenants. Now, Moses got circumcised. The next chapter starts with Abraham, and then Jehovah appeared to him by the terebinth tree of Mamre. He was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. You don't even really think about that. Does this chapter relate to the last chapter at all? But we're talking about the time of life. Look at the clue, the wonderful clue that I found in Yasher, in almost the very next verse of him being circumcised. It says, in the third day, Abraham went out of the tent and sat at the door to enjoy the heat of the sun during the pain of his flesh. Yehovah is having him get circumcised 3 days, maybe even 4 days before the time of life. It's this day that 3 men, they call them angels, but they also call them men, are going to appear to Abraham. I think it's the Melchizedek and some of his companions. They're going to go down, which would have been Shem at the time. They're going to go down together to Sodom. And this is the time of life. Look at what he says here in verse 10. And he, this is the Melchizedek, they called him the Lord, which in a sense he would be an Adonai. And he said, certainly he speaks for Yehovah. If he's not Yehovah himself, I don't think he is. A lot of people are going to try and tell you it's Jesus. You guys, get out of your goofiness. And he said, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life. Is this the time of life now that he's returning to him? And behold, Sarah, your wife, shall have a son. Sarah was listening at the door of the tent, and Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and Sarah had passed the age of childbearing. Therefore, Sarah laughed within herself, saying, this is not that important. I want to go down to here. 18:14. Is anything too hard for Yehovah? This is what the Melchizedek is asking him. The angel is asking him. He says, at the appointed time, I will return to you. At the appointed time, I'll return to you. Is it possible that this time is the appointed time also? Yes, yes, yes. According to the time of life. Isaac is going to be born at the time of life. I would say on the time of life. On that very same day. 400 years before we leave Egypt. Do you see how all this is starting to fit together? Now, this particular year that Yehovah gave him this covenant, kind of refined it a little bit, because up until then, they hadn't been circumcised. But now all the males have to be circumcised or they get kicked out of the camp. Well, they went down to Sodom the very next day. And it was that night that they were going to stay down by the fountain, sleep outside in the city. And Lot wouldn't let him do it. He said, you got to come inside. And he says he fed him. I think it was the Passover that night. And the very next day, first day of the Passover, as we know as Passover, first day of unleavened bread, is when Sodom was destroyed. Do you see how these things are going to fit together? Is it possible that what has been will be again, or what has been said will be again? What has been done will be done again? There's nothing new under the sun. Is it possible, likely, that we might see a great shaking of the earth in the future that's going to kill many, many people? And I think it's going to happen right after a Passover. We'll see. It's only speculation. But we know there's a great shaking of the earth that's going to happen. It says even the stars are going to fall from the sky. Oh my. Let's go back to our, I'm going to go back to the, I guess the better one. I got to go here. Let's go 41, I think, was where the better one was at. All right. So here's Isaac's been born. The next thing, 60 years later, Isaac is 60 years old when he's going to have Jacob and Esau. See, we're all putting these together. We're talking about generations of people. We had Abraham, Isaac, now we have Jacob. Afterwards, his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, so he named him Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore him. Trying to, again, tie these dates together. Now, Jacob is going to live 130 years before he goes into Egypt. So Pharaoh said to Jacob, how old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. Some of his ancestors were still alive even at that time. Now, this is where I found out how long we actually were in Egypt. Yeah, sure, 81:4. At the end of in fact, we're going to read this probably next week, now that I think about it, 81. I think we will. At the end of 210 years, Yehovah brought Israel's seed from Egypt with a strong hand. And Israel's seed traveled from Egypt, from Goshen, and from Ramses, and encamped at Sukkot on the 15th day of the first month. This is where we got to on the 15th day of the first month, the first day of unleavened bread. On that very same day. So you add up 5 plus 25 plus 60 plus 130 plus 210, you end up with 430 years. If you do it from Isaac, the birth of Isaac, you add up the 60, the 130, the 210, you get the 400 years. It all fits together. This means that Abram received the prophecy on the 15th day of the first month when he was 70 years old in Haran. It came to pass on the very same day that Jehovah brought Israel's seed out of the land of Egypt according to their armies. Zavot. Armies. I put, oh my, the ramifications of this new knowledge is mind-boggling for folks who will leave the doctrines and traditions of men behind and begin to learn only Jehovah's words given through Moses. This is why I prayed for us at the beginning. We have learned lies, worthless and unprofitable things. Not only politically, but spiritual things. We've learned lies. It's taught every day in our churches. Easter, Ishtar. It's all about sun god worship. The winter solstice. Supposedly the birth of Jesus. Oh my gosh, it's sun god worship. We don't know because we don't search it out. We just take these things for face value and we do it. You got to dig deeper. I put, whom will he teach knowledge? And whom will he make to understand the message? Those just weaned from milk? No, babies can't get it. You got to grow up. You got to start engaging your mind and thinking. Those just drawn from the breast? No, they can't get it. For precept must be upon precept, and precept upon precept, line upon line, and line upon line. Here a little, there a little. That's how you find it. That's how you find the 400 years. That's how you find Sodom and Gomorrah. That's how you find the time of life. Time of life. Isn't that amazing? You must be born again. Abraham was in Egypt his whole life. Haran, Canaan. He briefly was in Egypt and then went back. Ishmael cannot be the promised seed. Isaac and Israel's seed were both born on the same day. Yes, we are. Isaac was born on the time of life, and Israel's seed gets their second birth, as we're going to see today on the Passover. All this is going to happen again. All right, I want to go to 42. It is a night of solemn observance to Jehovah for bringing them out of the land of Egypt. This is the night of Jehovah, a solemn observance for all Israel's seed throughout their generations. There it is for the fourth time throughout their generations, a solemn observance throughout their generations. Look at this. This is 42. Let's go back here. First time. This is Jehovah's covenant for all Israel's seed throughout their generations, an everlasting ordinance. It's the same covenant that we saw at the time of life, where you had to be circumcised and keep the Passover. So this day, here's 14. So this day shall be for you a memorial, and you shall keep it as a feast to Yahweh throughout your generations. You shall keep it as an everlasting ordinance. Is it done with? No. Again, 17. So you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. For on this same day, there it is again, for on the same day, I will have brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore, you shall observe this day throughout your generations as an everlasting ordinance. And you shall observe these things as an ordinance, you and your sons forever. Not daughters, you and your sons, all the males. It's a night of solemn observance. This is the one we're on right now. To Yehovah for bring them out of the land of Egypt. This is a night of Yehovah, a solemn observance for all Israel's seed throughout their generations. 12:43. Oh my goodness. Now we're going to talk about 4 different kinds of men. I put 4 types of people. We're talking about 4 kinds of men. These are men. All your males shall be circumcised. Who is he talking about? We talked last week about how to keep the Passover. Today, we're talking about who is to keep the Passover. And he's going to spell it out in the next 5 verses. In fact, I think I'd like to read it on the right-hand side here. It's the same thing that is 43 through 48. Do I want to do that? Yeah, I want you to see how they hook together here. We'll talk about each person as we go through there. It says, and Yehovah said to Moses and Aaron, this is the ordinance of the Passover. The word ordinance is this word. Where is it? Here. Kukat. This is the ordinance of the Passover. No benakar, no foreigner shall eat it. But every servant who is bought for money, when you have circumcised him, then he may eat it. Isn't that exactly what we read in Genesis 17? The sojourner, the hired servant shall not eat it. In one house, that's the Toshav is his name, the Toshav. In one house it shall be eaten. You shall not carry any of the flesh outside the house, nor shall you break one of its bones. All Israel's congregation shall keep it. And when a ger, they call him a stranger. You know what? You look at these words in any of the Bibles that you read, foreigner, sojourner, stranger, native. There's so many different kinds of names that you can look at and think, wow, who is this? Check it out in the Hebrew and find out. And when a stranger dwells with you and wants to keep, who's you? Israel's seed. And when a stranger dwells with you and wants to keep the Passover to Yehovah, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it, and he shall be, as it says, a native of the land. The word that they're using there is an Ezrach. He shall be an Ezrach. The Ezrach, we're going to find out today, is B'nai Israel. That gets translated so often as the children of Israel. But these are all males. Males who have kept the Passover and become Yahovah's seed. Israel's seed. Yahovah kind, let's say it that way. His kasid, his kind. Translated in many Bibles as saints. For no uncircumcised person shall keep it. No aral person shall keep it. Remember, we talked about the aral today, the uncircumcised person who has not been lomo, not been circumcised. Well, first person that we're talking about right now is this man right here, the foreigner. Nope. Yes, the foreigner. The foreigner. It says, no foreigner shall eat it. What's a foreigner? The fact that you're here today listening to me would indicate to me that you're probably not a foreigner. Because the foreigner is so far from understanding Yahovah's ways, he doesn't even know who Yahovah is. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Hallowed be thy name. What's his name? The Ben Nakari has no clue what Yahovah's name is. Yet they repeat that verse every Sunday in some places. But they don't know Yahovah. They don't even know that it says, hallowed be thy name. What's his name? The Lord, don't you know? No, his name is Yahovah. It's the name that we swear in. It's the name that we don't take in vain. Oh my goodness. It's Ben Nakar. This is what it is. Foreigner. Translated foreigner from the word Ben Nakar. Ben is a son of a foreigner. A foreign son. Foreign son doesn't know anything about Israel. Oh, here, I've got it down here. A masculine noun meaning foreign. The word comes from the root meaning to scrutinize, perhaps drawing from the idea that people look closely at something foreign or strange. Israel, when they see a foreigner, they can tell he's a foreigner. They don't know anything about us. I put he's a citizen of another land and kingdom. He's not a citizen of Israel. You can't be a citizen of Israel unless you're a Ger and Ezrach. He's a citizen of another land. I was a citizen of another land. You know, most of my life, I was probably 45 years old before I became a Toshav. Didn't have a clue who Israel was. Didn't have a clue about Yahovah and his name. Didn't know anything about it. I put, this man is a citizen of another land and kingdom. He has no relationship with true Israel. He does not know of true Israel's ways or people. Doesn't even know who Israel is. Much more who their Elohim is, their lawmaker and judge is. They don't know. Let's go on. Next verse says, and every man's servant who is bought for money, when you have circumcised him, he made it. Remember, a man's servant who's bought with money can likely come from the nations. Are we going to see and have servants in the future? I think we might. Oh, that'll blow some people's minds. Will we have servants in the future? You know what? Being a servant in the household of an Ezra man means that you got to get circumcised and you get to keep the Passover. You keep the Passover, you're going to get eternal life. Oh, maybe there's some benefit to that, you think? When you have circumcised him, it doesn't even say he circumcises himself. It says when you have circumcised him, then he may eat it. Geez, he gets to eat the Passover. It's exactly what it said. Remember what he said, your servant who is bought with money. It said it in 17. Genesis 17, when you have a servant who's bought with money, you can circumcise him, and then he can have it. Here we are. Now the sojourner. There's actually two people that he's talking about here. The sojourner and the hired servant shall not eat it. So the Bendekar shall not eat it. No foreigner shall eat it. Now it says the sojourner and the hired servant shall not eat it. Remember, we're talking about who gets to eat the Passover. Talked about how to keep the Passover. Now we're talking about who gets to eat it. Who's going to benefit from it? The sojourner and the hired servant ain't going to benefit. Shall not eat it. Who's the sojourner and who's the hired servant? Here, I've got, and actually I should probably go back. Let me do it here. The Toshav is who gets translated as usually the sojourner. You know, surprisingly, when it says stranger, it's sometimes not the ger. But when it says sojourner, it's almost always the Toshav that's going to come up when you do a search to find out what it says in the Hebrew. And maybe that's more specific to the New King James Version that I teach out of, that this is happening. But I've seen that pretty regularly. They're pretty faithful about calling a Toshav a sojourner. But they also say a hired servant. A hired servant is not a servant. He's a hired servant. He's someone who's there for a time, and then he's going to leave. May come from the nations. He may come from who knows where. But he's not going to eat it. For practical purposes, I'm looking at the Toshav right now. He is a person who has a relationship with Israel, true Israel. He may be a vendor. He may be a customer. He may be a relative. Maybe you married somebody who wasn't in Israel at one point, but joined themselves, like Ruth. Ruth was a Moabite who left her mother and her father and the land of her birth and joined herself to Israel and Israel's God. That was important to her husband. I'm forgetting his name right now. When he took her as a wife. But if she had relatives, they would be Toshav. Boaz, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, Boaz, right. They would be relatives. They're Toshav. They kind of know Israel. They don't really know Israel's God. They don't know Israel's ways, but they kind of know. And when I was a Bendekar and finally became a Toshav, see, this is a process that we're going through. We start out as a Bendekar, a man born in a foreign country. Then we learn about who Israel is, or we learn about who Yahovah is, and we now are a Toshav. We've got some idea about what's going on. Here, look at the definition here. It says, let me find my mouse here. It says Toshav, a masculine noun meaning sojourner, a foreigner. See what they do? They have different names for them. You gotta get through the names. Go to the Hebrew. This word implies a temporary visitor who were temporary visitors who were dependent in some way on the nation in which they were residing. It denotes a foreigners who were closely linked to the economy of the people. Hear that? They're foreigners, but they're linked to the economy of the people. And a wanderer who has close ties to the land occupied by another people. I call this toshav, or sojourner, an involved alien. He's an alien, but he's an involved alien with respect to Israel. You follow me? I was in the car, but I met a man who was wearing tzitzit years and years ago. I must have been 45 years old when I met this man. He was wearing tzitzit. You know, I don't think he was Israel, but he was closer. He was learning Jehovah's ways. He probably himself was a toshav. I'm sure he was a voter in the U.S. economy, U.S. presidents. You know, he did all those things. He was a business owner. Can hardly not be a business owner and do that. But it was a change for me. It got me interested to learn more. And it was at that time that I would say I became a toshav. Like I said, I called this toshav an involved alien. You know, I was involved with him. He was an advertiser in the magazine that I was publishing every week. I put he has regular or semi-regular contact with true Israel. He still maintains his citizenship in another kingdom. He may dwell in Israel, but he's not Israel. He does not share Israel's laws, values, traditions, or goals. He may be drawn to true Israel, but probably considers their ways strange. Does that sound familiar to most people? Does keeping a real Passover seem strange to you? He may attend Sabbath meetings or even keep the Sabbath. He may wonder why true Israel doesn't participate in Easter and Christmas and why they keep those Jewish holidays. See, we get Jewish. We confuse Judaism with Israel. It's not the same thing. Oh, wait till you find out what's coming up here soon. He may wonder why true Israel does not take part in civil government. I don't take part in civil government. I've been voted for a president since 2000. George Bush's first 4 years, which I regretted the very next year, 2001, because I knew he was involved in the towers. I voted for Yehovah at that time, and I ain't changing my vote. He's who I serve. Many sojourners, Toshavim, don't want to learn true Israel's ways because they've been told that those laws are too hard or even unnecessary. Yeah, isn't this what we've learned? Let's go to 46. It says, in one house it shall be eaten. You know, oftentimes, and we talked about this a little bit last week, we were talking about who eats the Passover. Do ladies eat the Passover? 4 times a year, all your males shall appear before Yehovah. Passover. And the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Shavuot. And Sukkot. 4 times, all your males appear before Yehovah. Now, there's one time, every 7 years, that the ladies get to come to Sukkot. Jehovah spells it out specifically in Deuteronomy. But it says they shall eat the flesh outside. They shall, in one house, it shall be eaten. Talking about the Passover shall be eaten. You shall not carry the flesh outside the house, nor shall you break any of its bones. The men who were keeping the Passover stayed in one house in particular. It was a clean house. They didn't have any ladies in their menses screwing up with them and their Passover before Yehovah. See, this is the same reason why we don't have women go to war with us. If you have a woman messing up your camp because of her menses and making everybody unclean, you're not going to get the victory. Jehovah's not going to be with you. When we, Israel's seed, the Ezrach man that we're going to find out today, went up to the mountain to hear what Yehovah had to say to us, he said 4 days earlier, don't go near a woman. Be clean. There was no ladies on the mountain. Only clean men. See, this has such implications that we can hardly see it all. All the congregation of Israel shall keep it. Israel's assembly is who we're talking about. Who is Israel's assembly? The Ger and the Ezrach. All the congregation of Israel shall eat it. The Ger are part of Israel's congregation. Here it is, 12:19. We talked about this last week in this very same chapter. For 7 days, no leavened bread shall be found in your houses, since whoever eats any of the what is leavened, that person shall be cut off from Israel's assembly. This is the same word, Israel's assembly. This just says from Israel's assembly, but it's the same word right here and right here. Same word. From Israel's assembly, whether he is a Ger, or an Ezrach of the land. Speak to all Israel's seed, saying, on the 10th day of this month, each man shall take a lamb for their father's house, a lamb for a household. There was a house, some house that these men ate in. There weren't ladies there. Didn't happen. Next verse. And the third man that we're going to talk to about the Ger. Remember, we just saw the Ger and the Ezrach man. Here is the Ger. And I'm going to go back to we're going to go back and forth. Let's go to the Ger down here. We went through we went through this one. Now we're on the Ger, the stranger. This is the Ger. I put one from another land or kingdom who keeps Israel's laws. One from another land or kingdom. He's from another land or kingdom, but he keeps Israel's laws. And he's a subject of true Israel. You shall have the same law for a stranger and for one of your own country. Who's he talking to? He's talking to Israel and one of your own country, for I am Yehovah, your Elohim. One law shall be for the native born, the Ezrach man, and for the Ger, the stranger who dwells among you. Here's the Ger. I like this definition. A masculine noun, a word indicating in general one who is not native to a given land or among a given people, but has joined himself to such land and people. Oh, so beautiful. That's word study. A man who has left the kingdom of his birth and joined himself to Israel. He follows all Israel's ways, Jehovah's ways, no matter where he lives. It doesn't matter if you live in the United States. You're following Jehovah's ways, not the United States ways. Here's another one. One law shall be for the Ezrach and for the Ger who dwells with you. The Ger is a very special man to the Creator. He has repentance. See, this is what repentance is all about. Oh, I've got a writings on my blog. Let me just show this to you. I'm going to also attach this to the YouTube video. But if you go to, here, I guess it's over here. If you go to my site, here, Born Again, Spiritual Journey. The spiritual journey is going to take you through how a Gentile becomes a Ger and how a Ger becomes an Ezrach. You should read these. These are really important. It'll help you understand a lot of things. When a Ger leaves one country and joins himself to Israel, there's minimum requirements that he must attend to. Does he need to be circumcised? No, but there's things that he can't do if he's going to join himself to Israel from the very get-go. Minimum requirements. We'll talk about it. Ger have minimum requirements. There it is right there. Did you see it? Born Again, Ger have minimum requirements. Repentance. We're talking about repentance. We were following one set of Elohims, and now we're going to follow the Elohim. We had lots of lawmakers and judges, and now we're going to have only one lawmaker and judge. What's the first commandment? I am Yahovah, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt. Out of bondage. You shall have no other Elohim, no other lawmaker or judge before my face. We only serve one Elohim. No other lawmakers and judges. Got to make your life so that you don't have a connection with those lawmakers and judges. I talk a lot about that when I talk about, where is it? Coming out. Babylon. What is Babylon? The naturalization process into Yahweh's kingdom. Understanding jurisdiction, understanding surety. Delivering yourself. Take the yoke off your neck. It says in Isaiah 52. Loose yourself. That's what we're talking about doing. Becoming Jehovah's man. In Isaiah 56, it talks about the Ben-Nakar and the, what was it? Ben-Nakar and the, now I got myself curious. Let's go there. Isaiah 54, 56. I think it's 56. Let's try 56. Foreigner and the blessed is the man who does this, the son of man who lays hold of it, who keeps, remember, son of Adam, that takes care of this, the man, the Adam, the son of Adam, who takes care of this, who keeps from defiling the Sabbath, and keeps his hands from doing evil. This is a man who's going to repent and come into jurisdiction with Yehovah, follow his statutes and his judgments. That's for the son of the foreigner, the Ben-Nakar, and the eunuch. That was the other man that we were talking about. keeps my Sabbath, and chooses what pleases me, and holds to my covenants. Do you hear the process? These men, even to them I will give my house, and within my walls a place and a name better than the sons and daughters. I will give him an everlasting name like Abraham got, that he shall not be cut off. This is what we're talking about, you guys. Let's go back. We are at, I'm going to go here. Let's close this. 1246 probably. All right. Sojourner, the hired servant, the congregation, stranger. We're at 48. Let's go back to 48. This is the native-born son. No, we're still doing the ger, aren't we? Let's talk about the ger briefly. The ger of Ger is a very special man to the Creator. He has repented, left the kingdom of his birth, joined himself to Jehovah's called out people, and now obeys only Jehovah's ways given through Moses. Those are his statutes, his judgments, and his ordinances. He's a citizen of true Israel and keeps all Israel's laws no matter where he's at. He has no citizenship in any other kingdom. You can't be a U.S. citizen and be a citizen of another kingdom or be a citizen of Jehovah's kingdom. They don't fit together. You got to leave the kingdom of your birth, join yourself to Jehovah and his people. He dwells on earth as in a strange country under the big tent that we were talking about earlier, the Ohalim. Yes, the canopy that Jehovah has spread out over the earth. And when a stranger shall dwell with you to keep the Passover, it says, and wants to keep the Passover. No, and wants is not there. When a stranger dwells with you to keep the Passover. If the stranger doesn't keep the Passover, we're going to find in Numbers 9 that he and whoever of Israel that doesn't keep the Passover is going to get kicked out of the land. Kicked out of the gates. And when a stranger dwells with you to keep the Passover to Jehovah, let all his males be circumcised. Now, isn't it interesting? It says, let all his males be circumcised. It's his decision. Is he going to get circumcised and all his males are going to be circumcised? Unlike what we just read up here in every man's servant who has been bought for money, when you have circumcised him, then he may eat it. No, now it's saying it a little bit differently. Let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. But look what it says, you guys. You know what? I did not understand this portion until about 2000, I would say 2008, maybe. 2008. And I only understood it because we, the men that I was with at the time, were reading Exodus 12. And we kept a real Passover as best we could. And I went kicking and screaming, don't you know that Jesus is the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world? I was lost in the doctrines and traditions of men. I didn't know. I didn't understand the process by which a man becomes a son of the Most High. God kind. Elohim, kind. By keeping the covenant with Yehovah, a spiritual birth into a spiritual kingdom. I didn't get it. But when I read this passage afterwards, my gracious Father in heaven opened the words of it to me. And I realized this was how a man is born again. A spiritual birth into a spiritual kingdom. Look what it says. Let his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as a native of the land. For no uncircumcised person shall eat it. Do you hear what's going on here? He shall be as a native of the land. Native of the land. You know, you read this kind of thing, and you don't even know what it is that you're reading. A native of the land, native born, native of the land. One law shall be for the native born, they call them native of the land here, native born here, and for the stranger who dwells with you. The native born is the you. Native born here. This is where it says it. And the stranger, the ger, dwells with you to keep the Passover to Yehovah. I'm reading right here, folks. Let all his males be circumcised, and let him come near and keep it. And behold, or exist. That's the Hayah. As a native born, as an Ezrach of the land. What land are we talking about? It could be, let him become the land's Ezrach. The land is the land of Israel, the promised land that we have, and we are Israel. We are Ezrach, men who are born in that land. We are citizens of that land. For no uncircumcised person shall eat it. So this is the time that the ger, who was a Toshab, who was a Ben-Nakar, has now going to become an Ezrach man. But keep in mind, this is the first time that we're going to come in covenant with Yehovah. We get circumcised, it's a shedding of our blood. And the shedding of Yehovah's blood, the blood for Yehovah, is the lamb that we're going to slaughter and eat. Where was I going to go with that? It's a process. It's a process. We all go through the same process. Ben-Nakar, Toshab, Ger, Ezrach. Let me continue reading this. Wait on Yehovah, keep his ways, his derek, and he shall exalt thee to inherit land. To inherit land. This is remember, we're the Ezrach of the land. When the wicked are cut off, you shall see it. I have seen the wicked in great power and spreading himself as an Ezrach man. Yeah, we've got people living in our land right now. They're wicked. Oh, you have no idea how bad they are. Khazarians posing as Jews as if Jews is even God's people. Judah is one of Yehovah's tribes, but Jews are another thing altogether different. We don't get it. They're posing as new Ezrach. Yet he passes away, and behold, he was no more. Indeed, I sought him, but he could not be found. Ooh, we got people in our living in our land right now as if they're Ezrach. Because remember, the land belongs to the Ezra men. They're living in it like they're Ezra men. But they ain't Ezra men. They're wicked. And they're going down. Is there Ezra men in Israel? Oh, well, we'll protect them. But there's very few. Probably, maybe there's more in Israel than there is here. I don't know. Well, here we go. Do I have Ezra? Oh, I don't have. I thought I spelled it out. Let me see if I can find it in another place. 42. No, 40. Oh, it would have to be here. Yes. Yes. This is it. Oh, no, it doesn't have it here either. Oh, it does. It does. Okay, here's what I want to see. Native born. Adopted in Israel. Adopted in Israel. These are born again. They've been born again into a new land, a new country. Ezra, a masculine noun indicating a native-born person of the land. Remember, these definitions are written by people who probably aren't Ezra men, lack understanding that there even is an Ezra man. Those are the people who are writing these definitions. So you got to get past some of the words that they use. A masculine noun indicating native-born person of the land, as opposed to a stranger or a settler. Look at what they say. A stranger, ger, or a settler, toshav. Oh, they spelled it out just perfectly. These persons had full rights to take part in Israel's rights and festivals. Strangers could be treated as natives in some cases, but were to have in general respect with humanitarian treatment, just as natives. They were to be loved, as is used figuratively to describe native soil. Remember, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. The neighbor that they're talking about isn't your next door neighbor. It's the ger who dwells with you, the Ezra. We don't get it because we got all these doctrines and traditions of men in our minds. Okay, here's the spell it out. He's entered into covenant with Yehovah by shedding of his blood through circumcision and the blood of the animal that seals the covenant for the next year, just as Abraham did. He is the one who is spiritually born again. He is born into a spiritual country, Yehovah's eternal kingdom, and dwells under the big tent. He is a citizen, son, heir of Yehovah, a spiritual seed which was promised by Yehovah to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This Ezra gets so convoluted. They talk about spontaneous growth. It's a spontaneous growth. He was a ger, and he ate the Passover, and now he's an Ezra. That's a spontaneous growth. But then they go on, they talk about that is a native tree or person. Okay, person. Native tree, bay tree, born in the land, one of one's own country. These are all how it gets translated. After this dash, these aren't definitions. This is just how it gets translated. Here's another one, Ezra. This is this one is probably Strong's. This one is likely word perfect. Oh no, what is it called? Word study. There's the word study definition. Primitive root, properly to irradiate or shoot forth beams. Oh, that's very interesting. That is to rise as the sun, specifically to appear as symptoms of leprosy. They're using it in the negative. Now it's the dash, and then it says, arise, shine, as soon as it is up. I like this. But recall the former days. This is in Hebrews. I should put a space in here. But recall the former days in which, after you were illuminated, you endured a great struggle with sufferings. Oh, my goodness. Wayne, you're going through that right this very moment. After you were illuminated. What does it mean, illuminated? After you became Ezrach man, you endured a great struggle with, or great struggle with sufferings. I did. Lost my family, lost my friends, lost everything in my life. Went through a great struggle. But I'm so grateful because it's made me the man that I am this very day. Well, I'm not going to use the rest of these examples. Let's keep going. Where did we leave off? 48. We're almost done. Oh, this is a long one too. And an important one. Oh my gosh, this is so important. One law shall be for the Ezrach and for the Ger who dwells with you. Remember we said Ger keeps some of the laws, but not all of the laws. There's some things that only the Ezrach get to do. The Ger who came with us out of Egypt, they were called the mixed multitude or mixed heads of families who came with us out of Egypt. In addition to the 600,000 Gebarim that came out, those were the Ezrach men. None of those Ger got to go up to the mountain to hear the 10 commandments of Yehovah. Only the Ezrach men got to go. The Ger stayed behind. The lady stayed behind. One law shall be for the native born. Here it is, the native born. Here's the word right there, Ezrach. As I say Ezrach, it's Ezrach. It's kind of a hard K. Ezrach. Of Ezrach and the Ger who dwells with you. Thus Israel's seed did. Thus Israel's seed did. As Jehovah commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. Now, let's talk about the Ezrach as it relates to Israel's seed. You know what? Until you even know that there is an Ezrach, you'll never discover whose Israel's seed actually is. Let me try to help you. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of the abominations, the Ezrach and the Ger. They both say the Ezrach, Ha-Ezrach, and the Ger who dwell with you. So we have the Ezrach and we have the Ger who dwells with us. But now we're going to see in this next verse, so I'm saying we're talking about the Ezrach and the Ger who dwells with you. Look at who he's talking to, because the you has to be the Ezrach. If we go to Leviticus 18:2, the beginning of this chapter, it says, speak to who? Israel's seed, B'nai Israel, and say to them, I am Yehovah, your Elohim. See, line upon line upon line, precept upon precept, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. You can't see it until you start looking carefully for it. The Ezrach men, in other words, are Israel's seed who dwell with you, Israel's seed. This is the you is who he's talking to. Here's another one. This is Leviticus 17. This says, Therefore I said to Israel's seed, no one among you shall eat blood, nor the Ger who dwells among you. So here is Israel's seed and the Ger who dwells among us. Here's the Ezrach in 18 and the Ger who dwells with you. Do you see they're the same person? Israel's seed is the Ezra men. Again, here's another one from 17. And every person, all persons, and all persons that eats that which dies of itself, or that which is torn of beasts, as a native of the country, as an Ezra, is the word, as an Ezra, or a Ger, he shall wash his clothes, bathe himself in water, and be unclean until evening. Then he shall be clean. Again, who's he talking to? This is talking about the native and the Ger. Your own country. Talking to the Ezra men who are Israel. Here it is. Speak to Aaron and his sons and all Israel's seed, and say to them, B'nai Israel, Israel's seed. It says, children of Israel, get over it. You got to think better. This is the thing which Jehovah has commanded you. There it is, the Ezra and the Ger, who dwells with you. And the Sabbath. Produce of the land shall be food for you and you and your male and your female servants, your hired servants, and the Ger who dwells with you. We've got Ger who dwells with us. B'nai Israel has Ger that dwells with them, and the Ezra men have Ger that dwell with them. They're both the same people. B'nai Israel is the Ezra men. Another. One ordinance shall be for you of the assembly and the Ger who dwells with you. An ordinance forever throughout your generations, as you are, so shall the Ger be before Jehovah. So shall the Ger be before Jehovah. One law and one verdict shall be for you and for the stranger who dwells with you. Now, here's yet another one. This one really stands out for me. I actually took this from my notes on Leviticus 23, so I'm going to condense it and make it a little bit easier if I can. Ye shall dwell in sukkahs, protective coverings for 7 days. Those who are Ezra, the Ezra in Israel. All those who are as the Ezra in Israel. Did you hear that? Who's going to dwell in the protected coverings for 7 days during the Feast of Sukkot? The Ezra. Men are going to dwell in those protective coverings. They shall be seated. They shall, that gets translated usually as they shall dwell in Sukkot, that your generations may know that in protective covering, in Sukkot, Israel's seed, oh, look at that. They're using it in the same phrase, you guys. They're talking about the Ezra men. And now they're saying that the generation may know that in Sukkot, Israel's seed dwelt when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Jehovah your Elohim. You guys, I'm setting you free. Are you getting this? Do you understand that Israel's seed are the Ezra men? If you don't get this, this will change everything if you'll get it. You've got to understand this. Who's he talking to in Leviticus 23? Speak to Israel's seed and say to them, Yes, it's not the ger who dwells in this protective coats. It's not the toshav. Well, it wouldn't be the toshav anyway. This is why Passover comes first. This is why we have two chances, the first month, 14th day, and the second month, 14th day, to become Ezra man. Because if you don't become Ezra man, then Shavuot, Yom Teruah, Sukkot, they're all going to be worthless. Because they're for Israel's seed. 4 times a year, all your males shall appear before you. Who's the Yah you're talking about? Israel's seed, the Ezra men. You guys, I'm trying to set you free. I hope you're getting this. Go over it. Go over it again. Go over it again. Listen several times. I've given you so much information today. One law shall be for the Azarah and for the stranger who dwells with you. Thus all Israel's seed did. Israel's seed, the Ezra men, that's all the Ezra men did. As Jehovah commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. And it came to pass on the very same day that Jehovah brought all Israel's seed out of the land of Egypt according to their armies. He said it about the 430 days. He said it about the 400 years. What Jehovah says, Jehovah does. This is why he's bringing this out on the very same day. Well, next week we're going to go through 13, and we're going to hopefully get through what it says in Yasher about the Passover. And then we're going to start talking about our journey towards the Red Sea. Oh, there's so much to see. Who's going to die in the Red Sea? Is Joel Brenner going to die in the Red Sea? We'll find out. He didn't die in the movie. All right. Well, there's so much to see, so much to understand. Got to have eyes to see, ears to hear, a heart that understands. Maybe I should say a mind that understands. Got to wake up. We're waking up to a lot of things in the world right now, but there's a lot of things spiritually that we have to wake up to. I'm here to help you. I'm doing the best I can. If you listen to me every week, you'll get a better idea of the big picture. But you can't see it if you're just going to look a snippet here and a snippet there. This was a really important day. I hope that you will not only listen to this more than once, but that you will share it with others. All right. God bless you. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time.